Most high earners think they're doing well with money. If you had to stop working your 60, 70, 80 to £100,000 a year job tomorrow, how long would you actually last? Maybe a month, maybe 3, maybe 12 months, but maybe not. Because I've spent 20 years around people earning great money, and most of them are still completely dependent on their next pay slip. Some of them are earning £100,000 a year when they will be working into their 70s. Not because they want to, but because they have to. There are only 3 paths people take when their income increases. One path keeps you stuck, another delays freedom until you're too old to enjoy it. Only one path leads to early retirement or freedom, and today I'm going to reveal them to you. And once you see them, you will not be able to unsee them. Before I break this down and get under the skin of it, I want you to know this isn't just theory. I have personally built a multi-million-pound property portfolio whilst working a high-level salaried job and raising my family. I've also leased cars I couldn't afford and shouldn't have had, convincing myself it meant I'd made it. I've been on both sides of this. That's why I can tell you which side you are on right now. During my career, and definitely for the last 20 years, I've mostly been what I call a builder, an investor. But before that, I was an upgrader. I used to earn more, but I used to spend more. I used to upgrade everything. And at the time, it feels normal, because everyone around you is doing exactly the same thing. You don't question it. You just assume this is what success looks like. So let's break this down clearly so that you know which path you're currently on. Path 1, the upgrader, the spender. This is the most common path. Income goes up and lifestyle follows immediately. Bigger house, better car, more expensive holidays, just nicer everything. And on the surface it looks like progress. But underneath, something very different is happening. Your cost of living rises to match your income, sometimes even faster, so you put it on credit. So despite earning more, you'll still be dependent on that income, still tied to the job, still needing the next pay rise, and still running on the treadmill. This is the trap, trading autonomy for pleasure. Every upgrade feels like progress, but all you're really doing is raising the floor on what you need to survive. And high earners don't escape this. In many cases, they do it worse than the average earner, because it becomes one-upmanship. Income doesn't create freedom. Your gap does, your surplus does. Path 2 is what I call the stabiliser. And this might be the saver. This one looks sensible, more controlled, more responsible. These are the people who pay down their mortgage and contribute to a pension, avoid excessive lifestyle inflation. Maybe this might be the middle ground. On paper they're doing everything right, but here's the problem. The path leads to comfort, not freedom. Because the plan is still, work for 40 years, then stop, and hope everything lines up. The problem with this path is that all the wealth of these people is held up in their home and their pension, neither of which are liquid. And then the problem comes when a life-changing issue happens, because they do not have any cash to hand. And I see this all the time. I also see people in their late 40s and early 50s realising their pension isn't going to give them the life they expected. So what do? They double down. They panic. They start throwing more money into pensions, working even harder at the later end of their career, pushing retirement further out. Not because they want more, but because they've realised they don't have enough. And this is the uncomfortable truth. The stabiliser isn't doing anything wrong. They're doing everything they were told and maybe what their parents did. But nobody told them that sensible and free are two very different destinations. And this is the part that almost nobody talks about, because this doesn't just affect you, it affects what happens next. I've seen this play out over and over again. I know an engineer called Mark, still working at 72. I asked him why he's still working at 72. And he said, well, it's not because I love it, it's because I have a huge mortgage. And when we got into it, he basically helped his kids out, helped them get started after university, got them into a mortgage, and just continued helping them out for the rest of their life. Everything he did, he thought he was doing for the right reasons. But now there's no real exit. I know another chap called Dave. He's had a good career, he's had a great income, he's in his early 60s. But now he's working longer than he expected because he's bailed his daughter out financially more than once. And nothing's changed. She's got the same behaviour, she's repeating the same patterns. And when you step back and look at it, you realise something uncomfortable. It's not just about income. It's not even just about lifestyle. It's about trajectory. Because if someone stays on path 1 or even path 2, they don't just carry that into their own life, they pass it down. And inheritance isn't really about what you pass on, it's about what you pass down. Because if you don't understand how to build surplus, how can you teach it to the next generation? So your children just repeat the same patterns. Earn more, spend more, stay dependent on the job, and that will stress everybody out. Path 3, the builder or investor. And this is where the third path is different, because the builder doesn't just change their own trajectory, they change the trajectory of what comes after them. This is the minority of people. The builder does something very simple, but very rare. They create a gap, a surplus. The deliberate distance between what they earn and what they spend each month. And that gap is where their future is built. As income rises, lifestyle doesn't rise with it. Not at the same speed. They live below their means and invest the difference relentlessly. It becomes a way of life. Because the gap builds assets, cash flow, options and time. And eventually that leads to something else. It's what I call living in the game, glorious autonomy and independence now, where work becomes optional and life becomes yours. Most people I've spoken to over the last couple of decades tell me the same thing. They want to become investors, especially when they realise I've been invested in property for a while. But when you dig a little deeper, they don't actually have anything to invest. There's no surplus, there's no buffer, there's just pressure between paydays. And that's the problem. Because if you can't manage your own money, how are you going to manage an investment? This is where people get it wrong. They try to jump straight into growth without building any protection first. But the first stage of financial freedom isn't growth, it's protection. If you can't create a gap, if you don't have a buffer, one mistake, one delay, one problem, and everything falls to bits. So I'm not saying don't become a builder or an investor. I'm saying understand the process. Build the foundation first, then grow from there. I had a conversation with my brother the other day. He lives in Australia. And he asked me, what do you actually do all day now that you don't go to work? And I said, whatever I please. Now in reality, I still have structure, I still train, I still build, and I still work on things I care about, like this channel and helping people with their personal finances. But the difference is, it's my day. It doesn't belong to an employer or anybody else. And that's what people misunderstand. Freedom isn't about doing nothing, it's about having the choice. And here's what I find frustrating. High earners often think they know what they're doing. And when you show them another way, they often defend their position, even when the numbers don't support it, because changing path means changing your behaviour, and most people aren't willing to do that. So they stay on the same trajectory, earning more, spending more, staying dependent on the very job that they don't want to do. So when your income increases, you have a decision to make. You can follow the trap, you can stabilise and hope for the best, or you can build a gap. Because in the end, most people already know which path they're on. The question isn't whether you can afford to change, it's whether you can afford not to. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and watch out for my next video where I break down the two parts of financial freedom.